Welcome back, everyone. My name is Michelle, and this is Horror Book Hellhound. So for today's video, as the title suggests, I want to do a quarterly reading update. I want to start doing those each year because, I know a lot of people do the end of the year reviews and things like that. But I also want to be able to kind of look back on some of these videos and remember. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes by the end of the year, I forget what the fuck I have read at the beginning and in the middle and all of that good stuff. So what I've started doing is every April, August, and December. Yes, April, August, and December, I have a quarterly update. And obviously with December's, it is the end of the year review. So for April and August, they're more updates of just kind of like, where am I at so far? What are my favorites in certain categories so far? And then as I progress through the next 3 or so months, how much is in a quarter? 4 months? Yeah, 4. I can do math. I can do math. No, I can't. But I have compiled a list of 7 different categories for me to do these updates. And then by the end of the year, if they have changed that drastically based off of the different books that I've read since the last update, then we'll just keep trucking right along. Those will be the books that have like won the gold medal in those categories for the year. So feel free to use these questions. I don't know if anybody else uses these specific categories. I know there are very many different like year-end review formats that you can use to kind of like reward certain books for, winning out in certain categories. So just take that where you will if you're interested in it. But these are my 7 main categories that I enjoy the most or don't enjoy the most. So this was intended to be filmed in April. I know I'm a little late on that, but I mean, hey, beginning of May, same diff. So the first category is most unique or creative story. And I look for a lot of different factors that go into this. Something that I've not seen before, and which I'm not trying to say that I'm some kind of like academic where I've read every book there is to read and I know so much, yada yada yada. I'm not trying to sound all hoity-toity. Believe me, I have not read very much in my life, which is why I'm apparently making up for lost time. But anyway, back to the first category. So far this year, the book that has really struck me as having the most unique and creative story is His Darkest Craving. Something about this book, now don't get me wrong, it's not horror, even though there are certain scenes in it that could possibly be considered horror, but it is romance. There's a little bit of smuttiness that goes into it, but this book was not at all what I thought it was going to be, right? So literally I saw this book on Book Talk and it was introduced as just like shadow demon porn. But in reality, once you dive into the actual story, it is not that. It is not that at all. Our main male character is not evil whatsoever. And I found it very interesting and unique, the different perspectives that we had. I found our female lead to be very endearing because like she's been through a lot of domestic violence. I personally empathized with her and connected with her pretty strongly. So I just felt a unique experience reading this book, and there were a lot of romantic feelings involved. It wasn't just, smut, which I appreciated. I really enjoyed it overall. So if you're into kind of like a fantasy romance with a lot of spice, definitely check this book out. It's super short. I read it in a day. And let me know what you think. Let me know. The second category for my quarterly update is the most disturbing or the most haunting. One of those books that really unsettles me and just stays with me. You know what I mean? I'll be honest, I haven't read a whole lot of like super disturbing, grotesque horror. I do have a lot of the books that are out there as being some of the most disturbing, but I haven't quite worked myself up to reading them yet. Give me time. They are on the list. But not too long ago, I had an author on Instagram reach out to me asking me to read and review his novella. and that was A Darling Obsession. So far in 2022, this book is above and beyond disturbing and unsettling and haunting. And there were a lot of points throughout this novella that I really wanted to put the book down, not touch it anymore. There were some very grotesque scenes involved. Trigger warnings. There is, mentioning and experiencing of pedophilia involved, sexual assault, necrophilia. So be aware that there is some just very disturbing shit that goes on in that book. So far, that book is definitely number one as far as disturbing goes. So the third category I have, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I read just about as much smut and romance as I do horror, because I like to have that kind of balance. After I read a really disturbing horror novel, it's kind of nice to balance it out with some, soft, sexy time, romance, fantasy, things like that. If you know, you know. So the third category I have is the spiciest or sexiest scenes. And that's not to say that it's just absolute mind porn, but these two mentions are definitely in that realm. So as far as just blatant mind porn, I would have to bring up Satan's Affair again, just because that book is the kinkiest book I have ever read. And that might just mean that I'm a little more vanilla than I'd like to admit, but it's a fact. Now, if we're going more towards romance, it actually has a little bit of like a softer side to it, but still has some like super steamy scenes. Barbarian Alien was a shock this year. Had never heard of the series. It blew up all over BookTube with the release of the new covers, and now I'm obsessed. I am obsessed. I love the alien porn. But honestly, these books have some very endearing qualities to them as well. There is some warm, fuzzy feelings. It's not all just mind porn. Now, this next category seems like it would be an all-encompassing category, but honestly, I just wanted to have one category of the top tier book that I most enjoyed this year. So obviously we've only been, in the year for about 4 months. So I haven't read a whole lot this year, but I have read more than I intended to or expected to. But the book that I actually enjoyed the most, and I'm talking about enjoyed, like every second of reading it, every moment of the journey was enjoyable. It was actually a short story collection called Black Tongue and Other Anomalies. And I'm not a huge short story fangirl, like I used to just absolutely hate short story collections. But this author with these stories was so amazing. Every single short story I read, I wanted more from. I wanted to know more background. I wanted the stories to keep going. I could envision each story almost like it was playing out like a movie. It was fucking fun. And they were so drastically different from each other. There were no two stories in that collection that were super similar or alike. And I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed the process and the characters and the stories and just like these amazing worlds that were built up in such short stories. Like, these are short stories. Like that, and the novella as a whole is very tiny. You could read it in a day, I guarantee it. So yeah, if you love horror, if you love just having a very eclectic mix of short stories, definitely check out Black Tongue and Other Anomalies, because it was top tier. So I do have to have a category of the biggest letdowns, because we're all going to run across those books every now and then that we're super hyped about, that we're super on fire for, and they're just not going to follow through. So I've had two so far that were pretty big letdowns. One definitely supersedes the other though. The first one was The Abominable. I was very much looking forward to this book because it's by Dan Simmons, and honestly this is the first book I've ever read by Dan Simmons. I do have The Terror, which I've heard is worth all of the hype, but The Abominable is a great book. It's a great story, fantastic writing, The only reason it was a letdown was because I purchased it in the horror section. So I was expecting it to have some kind of horror elements to it, and it was nothing but an adventure story. There was no supernatural elements, there was no paranormal or horror elements. So in that essence, it was kind of a letdown, but at the same time, it was just, you know, a miscommunication of, oh, I bought it in a horror section, so surely it's scary. Always read your premises, people, always. But the biggest letdown of this year, the biggest, has to be Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I was so let down by that novella, I almost cried. Like, I know, I'm a wuss, but when I first saw the cover to Nothing But Blackened Teeth, I was prepared to be blown away. I was prepared to be completely immersed in Japanese horror and Japanese folklore, and it just didn't happen. It did not happen. Not saying that the writing wasn't wonderful. It was. Like, I'm not knocking the author at all. It's still a great story. It's still wonderful writing. Very few grammatical, if any, grammatical mistakes. I don't remember catching any. But it did not deliver the hype. You know what I mean? Like, the hype was so huge, but it was blown so far out of proportion, in my opinion, and it was definitely not living up to those expectations. I have 2 copies of Nothing But Blackened Teeth, the UK edition and the American edition. I'm definitely going to keep the American, just because I love that cover so fucking much, but I don't even want the UK edition at this point. I'm never going to read that book again. Like, it's never going to be read again. I'm literally just holding on to it because it's kind of like a piece of art with the cover. So, yeah. Definitely biggest letdown so far. For the 6th and second to last category, we have biggest accomplishment. So this is a category that a lot of booktubers, bookstagrammers, all the above have. And this is like a book that I have read this year that feels like the biggest accomplishment I have made so far. And honestly, just like I was talking about in this last video with wrapping up April, so far this year, the biggest accomplishment I've had is finally finishing the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo with Ruin and Rising. I finally finished Ruin and Rising. It was way easier to get through Ruin and Rising than it was Siege and Storm. It took me probably 3 months to finish Siege and Storm just because I was so bored and I kept putting it down and picking it up and putting it down. But Ruin and Rising saved that trilogy, in my opinion. It had a lot of action. It had a lot of like back and forth, like, ooh, you know, which way is this gonna go? And I definitely felt like it was gonna go down a very dark, disappointing path, but really it didn't disappoint. It really didn't. So I am looking forward to kind of continuing in the Grishaverse later this year. But so far, that's my biggest accomplishment. I'm sure that will be outshined at some point, but that's just for now. Last but not least, we have the category of put me in my feels the most. This is a book that either made me cry, made me want to cry, made me feel very melancholic. Is that a word? Nostalgic, or just, I don't know, just had me in my feels, made me feel something very passionately. And so far throughout this year, that would have to be Dead of Winter, and that also is a short story collection by Keelan Patrick Burke. Now, I know a lot of people on BookTube are like anti Keelan Patrick Burke right now. I honestly don't know what the tea is. I have no idea. I'm so like not in the loop when it comes to things like that. So if me mentioning his work offends you, I apologize. I don't mean to. Like, I literally don't look up stuff and I'm never in the loop. But I did read that short story collection, I want to say in January or February, sometime early this year. And it really did have me in my feels. There are a lot of stories in that short story collection that are just very emotional, very like tragic in a way. Like, there is a lot of tragedy, a lot of depression. It definitely left me in a very like saddened state after I read it. And again, very short collection. Like, I'm talking, you can read that within an hour or 2 tops, if you don't have any distractions, that is. But yeah, that so far this year is definitely the book that has had me most in my feels. I have purchased a couple of books since then that I have a feeling will definitely overshadow Dead of Winter, just because like the premise alone almost had me in tears. So Those books will be revealed in good time, in due time, whatever the saying is. But that's pretty much it, guys. That is my quarterly reading update, and those are my 7 categories for my updates. So the next quarterly update will not be until August or September, depending on when I feel like doing it. And then we'll wrap up the year in December or at the beginning of next year. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But let me know what you guys think. So far in your reading, what books are winning in these categories for you? If you yourself are a booktuber or a YouTuber and want to respond and use these categories, please tag me in them or let me know so I can go check out your videos, because I think it is so cool when people use my stuff, which doesn't happen like ever, but just if you do, let me know. I want to know. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you always know when I'm harassing you. If you want to follow me on other social media, there is Instagram, there is Goodreads. I will link those down below. And I do have another YouTube channel called Michelle's Tribe. It has a bunch of old videos on it. If you want to go show it some love, feel free. I will also link that down below as well. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, a wonderful day, and are being safe out there in the world. So be sure to comment down below if you've made it through this entire video with a little devil emoji or something like that. And I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace out, Hellhounds.